Cool. Good evening, friends. This is Ankit. I'm co-founder of Dialogues, and this evening we'll be having a quick chat with one of our very important community facilitator from our books community, Mandar. He's agreed to join us this evening. How are you, Mandar? Welcome to the session.
Thank you, Ankit. I'm very well, thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on this to talk to me. It's a pleasure
It's
to be
always
here.
a pleasure. Yeah, especially on a weekday, I'm sure work from home has put more work on everyone's plate nowadays. So getting time on a weekday is hard,
Yes, and,
uh,
and neither you nor I can refuse Rukaya. So
and we can't refuse Rupaya. Yeah. That goes without saying. I hope she's watching. Let's get started. Why don't you tell all our friends something about yourself, what you do, where you're from.
okay, this is probably the hardest question. So by day, I work as a data scientist and as a data science practice leader for one of the world's largest services organizations. And yeah, I love my job, no question about it. But I think I'm more than that. I'd like to believe there's more to me than just being a data scientist. I like to think of myself as a writer and a poet. I'm a reader, and I just in general like to be curious. I guess I think it's something that's in my nature. So that's who I am.
And you're based out of Bangalore, right?
Yes, I currently live in Bangalore. Bangalore is my home right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long have you been in town?
I've been in Bangalore for about 17 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay. Since the time I came here to study, basically, since then I've been here. Got my PhD here.
Wow.
Built my career here.
So PhD, so I should address you as Dr. Mandar.
Please don't. Please don't. Please don't. That is so unfair to the real doctors who are actually useful with that title. Yeah.
I know a couple of my friends. Like we used to joke about it while we were younger. A couple of my friends were like, yeah, easier way to be a doctor is, I guess, do a PhD rather than go through MBBS and MD and all that.
And in the end, it turns out they are both equally painful. But the pain teaches you something. So I think my my interest in writing and my passion for writing, I believe, took root in my career as a researcher first. It starts with being curious.
Yeah. So let's get back to your reading. How did you get into reading? When was it that you picked up your first book? Let me ask you that.
Okay. So this one of my friends also asked this question around the New Year's time. And I think at that time, I remember thinking back, and there's no clear, I don't have a clear recollection of when I started reading, but I think it must have been sometime around around my 6th or 7th standard, because I remember winning Ivanhoe as an illustrated version of Ivanhoe and Treasure Island as prizes in some debate competition or something of the sort. And I remember reading those first, and then I think I must have read Rabindranath Tagore's Post Office. So those three kind of happened around the same time span. I don't remember exactly when, though, but like a long time ago.
It was when you.
But there was also this, there was this culture at home where, well, I wouldn't say my parents are avid readers, but my mother would take every opportunity she could find to go and pick up a book from a circulating library or one of those mobile libraries,
Yeah.
that minivans and trucks used to bring books. She would pick up a book from one of those every opportunity she got. My dad used to have some books at home, not a whole lot, but there was always this inclination towards art and music.
Okay.
And if we wanted to buy books, my sister and I, they would never refuse. So they would always buy us a book, get us to read. They were always happy for us to indulge in reading, in music, in art. So that culture, I guess, was at home, something in the blood, I guess.
Nice. And how much do you read? Matlab, is it on a daily basis, or is it like you make sure, yeah, I want to have those 1 hour or 2 hour a day set aside just so that I can sit and read?
Actually, I would love for that to happen. It doesn't happen that way. So
Yeah.
I do not get to read as regularly as I would like.
Mm-hmm.
These days, I'd consider myself fortunate if I read, say, a book every month, one book every month. And even that, sometimes seems extremely difficult. During there are good periods where I'm able to read maybe like 25 books a year or something like that, but there are times when I can barely lift a book in an entire month, right? So there's no fixed quota, or I try not to put pressure on myself, because there are books around me, and it always feels simultaneously good and bad to see those books. You feel good that you have all those, but then you feel bad that you're not picking up a lot of those. Plus we have this most of us have this tendency to, when you see a good book, you just want to grab it, right? Regardless of whether you're going to read it, you're just going to grab it and think, maybe I'll read it someday. So yeah, I do read, but these days not as often as I should like.
That's true. A lot of people build libraries at their house just by just picking up books. Like, okay, I like this book. I like this. I've heard about this book,
Yeah,
and let me just keep it. Maybe
yeah.
I'll read it someday. So coming to that point, what do you think, or how do you think someone can start reading? Generally what happens is, especially around New Year's, and also definitely this lockdown has probably forced a lot of people into developing some hobbies or habits, and people tried to get into reading. But what would be those, like, 2 3 pointers on, because a lot of people search on Google of how to start, where to start, how to start reading.
Yeah, I guess again, there is no fixed framework for this. But one thing that I would like to advise people about is uh, to not get sucked into this elitism. So you'll hear a lot of serious book readers say, "Oh, don't read Chetan Bhagat," or don't read whatever Rupi Kaur. And I myself do not like their writing, but that doesn't mean that somebody else should not pick them up, right?
Mm.
So, and especially because some of these writers really have made books accessible to the general public, right?
Yeah.
So, as much as you'd like to criticize, say, a Chetan Bhagat or somebody like that, it is to their credit that they actually brought the novel into the Indian home, right? It's to their credit. I
Yeah.
don't want to read it is another matter, but you actually see a lot of people kind of, say, "Oh, don't read that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're stupid for reading that." That's not true. So I'd say, if you want to start reading, just go and pick up any book that you've heard of. Go and pick up. Doesn't matter who wrote it, doesn't matter what genre it is, doesn't matter if it's a thriller or some whatever romantic comedy or whatever it may be. Just go and pick it up. It doesn't have to be serious literature, right?
Yeah.
Go pick it up, read it, right? Get into the habit of reading. Read anything, just read, okay? And then maybe gradually evolve your understanding of the world of literature. Maybe explore different geographies, writers from different geographies, maybe explore different genres,
Yeah.
right? And uh, go beyond the the popular idiom, I would say. So for example, and we were talking about this in our last dialogues with books as well, the moment you
Okay.
say Latin American literature, there are very few names that come to mind, right? There's a
Yeah.
Marquez that comes to mind, maybe Borges, Uh, uh, very few, right? But
Yeah.
there's also an Octavio Paz. There's Isabel Allende, and so go explore and pick up one of their books and read. But let that be an evolving process. Don't force yourself to go and read some book just because somebody thinks it's fashionable. Just go and read something because you think it'd be entertaining. That's a
Yeah.
good way to start reading.
So that's a good point. Like read it for yourself rather than
Yeah,
read it just to impress someone else and then be bogged down by, oh my God, this was such a hard book to read. Maybe pick
absolutely.
up.
Actually, during my teens, and I have no shame admitting this, during my teens, I think I must have picked up some John Grisham's, uh, and one or two of them are still in my book rack. The one here, there's one more there. So they're there, and I did read them. Today, I
Yeah.
might not prefer them, but I did read them, and that,
Yeah.
what actually got me hooked to reading, and I got to explore more.
Fair enough. Now that you're mentioned, because I was noticing the book rack behind you. So that was going to be my next question. If and when I come to your place and I go through Mandar's book collection, what is it that I would find? What are the different genres?
So, firstly, it's not just Mandar's book collection; it's Mandar and Aditi's book collection.
Okay.
And I think we have an interesting mix. So this bookshelf is actually new. It's come in just today. We moved into a
Oh,
new
wow.
house, and all our books were kind of uh, piled up in one corner of the room. And just today they found a home. We're expecting one more. So
Okay.
what you will find if you browse through our book racks is a mixture. There are some books which are nonfiction. There are books like *Sapiens*, which I haven't yet read. There are a few Richard Dawkins, I guess, a few autobiographies. There are a few short story collections. As far as novels go, I think we have a good collection of uh, Latin American literature, a good
Mhm.
collection of African literature,
Mhm.
European literature, Indian literature. There's a lot of
Wow.
fantastic English writing by Indian writers, some really top grade stuff. So I think that's what you'll mostly find, and some poetry collections, of course, in Urdu, Kannada, and in English. I do have some Kannada novels as well, but I myself do not have much fluency
Okay.
in reading my own native language, my own mother tongue, and I'm ashamed to say that I need to do better on that front. So yeah, that's what you'll find.
Basically, a full-fledged library itself. You've named so many different genres. सब कुछ मिलेगा
Yeah, I
यहाँ
mean,
पे.
it's not like there like we don't have thousands of books. We probably have a few hundred books, say around 500 books. So each of the genres that I've named, maybe you'll find 7, 8, 10 books, not a whole lot more than that. So it's a very modest collection. It's not a library by any measure.
Yeah.
It's basically a collection of 3 or 4 bookshelves.
And what is uh, what does actually reading mean to you? What do you really love about reading?
So what reading means to me? So one of my friends, Alay Shah, who's
Yeah.
also is one of the dynamic young people leading the dialogues with books community.
Correct.
And honestly speaking, it's the people like him who inspired me to become a part of that community. So
Wow.
he and I were talking about the exact same thing, right? What does reading mean to you? I, I've held this belief for a while. So for me, reading is about finding a story, right? It's about finding a story. See, yes, I mean, it could be about self-discovery for people. I've heard people say, "Oh, it helps me discover myself and everything." I
Yeah.
really don't know what that means. I'm happy to believe what they say. I'll take their word for it. But for me, it's just about finding a story. I'm a sucker for stories, like you put in your poster as well. So uh, I believe that when a writer writes something, right, they just write what they have in mind. They write something that they just believe in, and they write what they wanted to tell you. Okay,
Yeah.
I believe the story is in the reader. It's not in the book, right? So when I read the book, I discover the story in that book. Maybe if you read the same book, you'd find that story differently. You probably find a different takeaway from it, a different story in it, right? So the story, I think, is in us. It's just that the novel is in that is in those pages. So what reading means to me is discovering stories
Wow.
in those pages.
And then just imagining, because every time
Absolutely.
I've tried to read something, it's I really like those pages where, when they're describing a house or
Yeah,
describing a person, and then you're trying to picture that,
right.
how it will look, and
Exactly.
obviously all your past experiences come into it when you are designing it in your mind.
Exactly. And that's you're right. That's quite an experience, you know.
Yeah.
uh, for example, when you read I don't know, when you read Purple Hibiscus, for example, uh, Adichie describes this home. She doesn't describe that home in very great detail, but still you end up imagining a house in which these events occur. So there's a Catholic father and there are children who haven't really discovered their own freedom yet. You imagine that place, the actual physical space, right? Yeah, you imagine what the Buendia home must have been like in 100 years of solitude. And so yes, imagining all of that, imagining the characters. Sometimes I'm a visual kind of guy, so sometimes I give quirky characters to those quirky attributes to those characters that the writer themselves did not write.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good point. Okay, let me ask you a personal, not a personal, but regarding reading only. Um, so what's your favorite style? What kind of writing or style of writing do you like to read the
Ah,
most?
style of writing.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not asking about a genre or anything. I don't have a particular genre per se anyway. So
No, no,
style,
the style of writing, more about writing style rather than a genre.
right. So writing style. Look, I'm a great admirer of writers who can inject humor into their stories, right? So that's one thing that I definitely admire. But over the last maybe 3 years, I guess, I've become particularly fascinated with these some of these novels that have a very cathartic writing style. It's like a stream of consciousness. So
Okay.
it's almost like this writer is just they're just thinking out loud, and they're just telling you whatever is going on in their mind, right? So they've just gone and put all those thoughts to paper. Okay. And what usually happens in such novels is, because it's stream of consciousness, because it's being told to you as if somebody is fervently and feverishly ranting about something, you see that these novels end up having extremely long sentences, huge paragraphs. Okay, sometimes these sentences run into pages, and there are cases where an entire novel is just one sentence. So it happens like that because they're not bothered about the syntax of the sentence anymore. They just want to convey a thought to you, and as long as that thought is, as long as it's a train of thoughts, as long
Okay.
as there's a chain, as long as there's a connectedness between the different thoughts, they will continue writing it in the same sentence. They separate it with commas and semicolons and colons or whatever.
Yeah.
It won't even matter, right? They'll even continue writing the same sentence in the next paragraph,
So you're
right?
saying pages and pages without any full stop.
Correct. So yes, and as odd as it seems, it's actually a very fascinating way of writing for me, because it shows that you can have a certain amount of disregard for the language and for the grammar, and still be able to tell a wonderful story. In fact, you'll be able to tell a better story because you chose to do that,
Oh wow.
right? Because you chose to lay waste to the norms,
Yeah.
to so to say.
So how is it different? Like it's just a different style of writing, and it's different from writing long sentences and long paragraphs.
Yeah, so it is yeah, definitely different from writing long sentences and long paragraph. Look, writing long sentences is not novel, right? There are several people who have done that. You can write complex sentences, compound sentences, with multiple clauses because it just suits the context. But that doesn't make it stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness essentially involves that this person is, they've got stuck into that thought, right? So there is some idea and they've got stuck into it. Okay. And they are just right now, they are articulating, they're trying to articulate that thought to you, and they won't stop till they have finished articulating that thought. That's the kind of essence that you get from reading these novels. So there's this, and I think we touched upon this book also very briefly. One of the participants in the previous session was a friend of mine called Sanket Patil, and I think he very briefly touched upon this. There's this beautiful novel called Dancing Lessons for the Advanced in Age by a Czech writer called Bohumil Hrabal. And I think I got introduced to that book from my friend only. The entire book is one sentence. It's not a very big book. It's like maybe 100 pages or even lesser than that, something like that. Okay, small book. But the entire book is one long sentence. And this is the narrative is just one guy. He's just standing there and he's just rambling on about his life and his beauties. He keeps calling it, right? So that's one. And you have you have Raja Rao. So Raja Rao, probably the most eminent Indian writer in the English language in history, right? So he wrote a book called Kantapura in 1938, if I'm not wrong. Okay. And the way he's written this book is, it's not entirely stream of consciousness, but there is a stream of consciousness there, with the addition that he has told that story colloquially. So it is like, if you understand the Kannada language, you would say he may as well have written this in Kannada, because almost phrase for phrase, he has essentially transplanted the Kannada idiom into the English language.
Wow.
Right? And he writes these long winding sentences that absolutely make sense, and gorgeous, absolutely beautiful composition. There's similarly several other books, especially in recent years. 2018, I think. Okay, I have that book here. Let me see if I can show it to you.
Sure.
So in 2018, there's this book called Milkman, which won the Booker. Okay. And so Milkman actually apparently wasn't one of the favorites to win the Booker, but I think the jury awarded the prize to this book because they found the narrative style compelling. So this is a book about a young woman who is talking about her harasser. She has a stalker, a harasser, who positively harasses her. He's not just stalking her, he's harassing her. And he's doing it in a way that, gives him plausible deniability, right? So if you actually sat and analyzed, you'd question, is he really harassing her, right? But he is. So he's on that gray line, which is so real. So many women actually face that, and it's hard to prove, right? So this is a narrative that focuses on a character like that. So this is a guy who's maybe some 41 years old, and this girl is only 18 years old, and he served in the forces earlier, and now he's harassing her. Okay, so she's telling you the story about how she has to cope with it and how she deals with it. Okay, and this Anna Burns does in these long sentences that span pages together, and it is very well written. It's slightly laborious to read. Most stream of consciousness writing, with the exception of Raja Rao's Kantapura, are rather laborious to read. But then somebody in the jury for the 2018 Booker noted that it's like trekking up a mountain. It's difficult.
It's difficult.
You'll even be out of breath. But the view from the top is beautiful.
Oh, wow. Very well put. Yeah.
Yeah, and another important thing about this book is that there are no names to any of the characters.
Oh.
Yeah, so Milkman is the name of the harasser.
Oh, okay.
The perpetrator
Mm-hmm.
is named Milkman. He is not a milkman. He doesn't supply milk. She's just calling him Milkman.
Yeah.
And she talks about my first sister, my middle sister, my
Oh.
first brother-in-law, second brother-in-law. So everybody is given a designation. There's no name. So
Wow.
so Milkman kind of in 2018 made
Okay.
Stream of Consciousness resurface. And after that, in the 2019 Booker shortlist, you find two other books which have a similar kind of narrative style. One is called Girl, Woman, Other, which
Okay.
won the Booker along with Margaret Atwood, by Bernardine Evaristo. Wonderful book about 12 mostly black women
Mm-hmm.
in Britain who tell their story, their struggle, day-to-day struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is a book called Ducks Newburyport, which is a personal favorite because this is a book that's extremely quirky. It's about a housewife in,
Okay.
I guess, Iowa or Ohio, one of those states. And in it, she's just talking about day-to-day things. Okay, how did America become a country like this? When did it decline? What will we do next? And then she suddenly switches to something extremely mundane. Okay, so this is like a housewife's rant. Okay,
Okay.
beautifully told. So several books like that have come to the fore.
Wow. And you're saying that the style of writing is now resurfacing, where you said it's not something that is new. It's always been there. It's just that people are now warming up to this. If I
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if people have warmed up to it yet. Maybe people may have picked up Milkman and Girl, Woman, Other because they actually won the Booker and
Yeah,
awards to help highlight some books. But
exactly.
then there are so many other books that do not win awards and they're just as
Yeah.
good. So I don't know if people have warmed up to them yet, but I think that style of writing is coming back into vogue. Let's put it
Mm-hmm.
that way. But yes, that style has been around for a very long time. Rajarao did it in 1938. Bohumil Raval did it at least a few decades ago, and now it's resurfacing.
Wow. So why don't you just tell us, like, some 5, 6 books that a person can pick up in this style of
Okay,
writing?
so I would recommend the same five that I just talked about. Let me see if I can think of any others. No, so these five would be my recommendations. Pick up Kantapura by Rajarao. You must have this book with you. You must own a copy of this book. That's one. I'd highly recommend Dancing Lessons for the Advanced in Age. And I would also recommend reading a blog by Chandrahas Chaudhary.
Okay.
Chandrahas Chaudhary himself is an Indian novelist and a very good one at that. And I met him in January, and we talked about this blogger, and it's actually an article in the Hindustan Times, if I'm not wrong, where he talks about the art of the title, And this article was sent to me by my friend, actually, by Sanket, and he said, "Read this." And I happen to remember it when I met Chandrahas, and he told me about a huge list of books that have some extremely interesting titles. I remember I wrote it down. I'll try and find it sometimes, just as an aside. So Dancing Lessons for the Advanced in Age by Bohumil Rabal, Milkman by Anna Burns, Lucy Ellman's Ducks Newburyport, and Bernardine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other.
And you're saying anyone can pick it up, even like a person like me who doesn't read that much can pick up, or it will be laborious?
Well, look at other than Kantapura,
Mm-hmm.
the other four that I mentioned. Well, even Dancing Lessons for the Advanced in Age is not a very easy book to read. So
Okay.
yes, so including that, they are going to be a little difficult to read. But
Yeah.
like someone on the jury said,
Yeah.
it's like a trek. You do still trek, right? It hurts
Yeah.
your legs and everything. You're tearing your hair apart, but you still get to the top because the view from there is beautiful. So yeah, you can pick it up, but if you're not able to make it, don't stop reading.
Yeah, and then just go back to your normal book.
Yeah. And come back to it even
And
later. And look, I, for one, do not believe in finishing a book. I don't know what that means. Okay. So I like to pick up a book, and if I like one passage, I'll just read it over and over again. It's for me. I do not
yeah,
have to prove
exactly.
what number of books I've read. It's pointless, right? And I for one also fortunately do not care about spoilers and endings and so on. So to me it really doesn't matter. So
The maid killed the person, or
it doesn't matter.
the butler killed the.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Mandar. That was a very insightful. Um, well, that brings us to the end of today's chat. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Uh,
Thank you for
and
inviting me.
so we talked about Mandar. We talked about a very different style of writing, which is stream of consciousness writing, if I got it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is about writing, basically just putting your thoughts on paper and just ranting it out.
If you wanted to achieve catharsis by writing, what would you do?
There you
That's
go.
what you do.
And Mandar's suggestions on some of the books that you can read to follow up on those writings. So yeah, so it was great, and I just wanted to say congratulations on moving into a new house.
Thank you so much.
And say my hi to Aditi as well.
Will do.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you so much for your time, buddy. It was
Thanks,
great
buddy.
talking to you. Bye-bye.
Same here. Likewise. See ya.
Bye-bye.